We are the two disabled dudes. Sean and I were diagnosed with a rare disease called Friedreich's ataxia. We're different times, not together. And we have a weekly podcast where we talk about living life beyond circumstances, whatever those circumstances are. And we had an incredible time last year at the Global Genes Conference in San Diego, meeting everybody, and it was really awesome. And we're really honored to be here tonight to be able to connect with everyone how we can.
Kyle, I was thinking about last year and how beautiful San Diego was and all the fun people we got to meet and the interactions and all the cool stuff we did over the few days. And one thing that really sticks out to me is how much of a part I think you and I actually had in putting Nebraska on the map. I don't know if you remember, but that was a part of our conversation with Nina, right? And I don't think anybody knew that Nebraska was a real state before that.
Yeah, no, we're the ones that are responsible for putting Nebraska up there for sure.
Not to pat ourselves on the back or anything.
Yeah, no, I love that. So, Sean, like everyone who's watching tonight, the last 6 months of our lives, right, have been just like this, staring at a computer screen, trying to communicate with each other, right? I want everyone to raise your hand if you're sick of the word virtual. Yeah, me too. And so in the FA community, we've turned all our events into virtual, right? But it's been really, really incredible to see the community step up and really make the best of this and make it happen despite what we need to do in this situation. And I really think that's what's happening here tonight, and that's what happens at Global Genes, right? We all come together and we turn a bad situation into something that we're truly making progress about. And so thank you to Global Genes for putting this evening together and putting this whole summit together in these circumstances.
I don't know if everybody can see it, but in the background, I brought popcorn to this watch party.
Nice. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy that popcorn. What we want to do now, Sean, is we want to bring on Bo and Daniel. These guys actually met at the Global Genes Conference several years ago, and they started a film festival and a channel, and so we want to find out a little more about that. So, Bo and Daniel, welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having us. It's great to be with you. And yeah, we met at Global Genes 5 years ago, and we're really honored to be here tonight and to be part of this event. And it's really fitting that 5 years later, here we are sharing some of these films with everybody. We're excited to be here, so thanks for having us.
Definitely. Thanks, Sean and Kyle. One of the first conversations Bo and I ever had, as he said, was at a Global Genes event, and we were talking about how we share stories about our kids and their rare diseases and what the best ways of getting those stories out there, whether they're blogs or podcasts or eventually films. So it's really kind of coming full circle 5 years later, and a lot of things have changed. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that going to Global Genes has changed my life and probably Bo's.
Yeah, how amazing it. Go ahead, Sean.
Probably true for many of us, right? So many of us have the opportunity to tune in from home tonight, or their cell phone while they're sitting in an airport or wherever life is unfolding for them right now. I think many of us would agree that the community that we all find here with Global Genes in each other is pretty powerful in and of itself. We want to talk about your efforts. You talk about trying to figure out what did we do, podcasts, blogs, film, and obviously we're here tonight because of so much of the work you guys have done with the Disorder channel. Can you give us a little bit of the background story behind the channel?
Yeah, definitely. So we started a rare disease film festival called Disorder in 2017. It was in Boston, and then it was in San Francisco, and it was going to be in New York City this year. And that didn't happen. It was going to be in May. And Daniel and I had been talking for a while about starting a collection, like a channel of films that had been submitted to the festival before, but also things that we found out about after the festival and hadn't been able to include, and just kind of building a collection of as many rare disease films and videos as we could. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And Daniel, maybe you can talk about what happened next.
Yeah, we, of course, pandemic and COVID necessitated something other than a live event festival, which, was our plan. But then pivoting and adapting, you started to see the strengths of what we could do in a TV channel that we couldn't do at a live event. Obviously the geography, if it wasn't convenient to get to Boston or San Francisco or whatever city we chose, it's certainly convenient to get to your couch and your living room television. So that helps. I think we can reach more people that way. And the number of films or videos and pieces that we put into the channel can be almost infinite. Whereas in a festival setting, we had to fill a certain schedule and we couldn't go over that schedule. So sometimes we had to make some hard choices. And now, it might have been our tendency to say, well, if we've got 3 or 4 films on a given disease, that's enough. And now on the channel, we can say, how about 5? Let's go with 6. If they're all good, let's show them all. So we're really building a nice collection there. And I think it's becoming a destination. You can know that our stuff is trustworthy. It's
Right.
the patient stories. It's not some exploitative, reality TV version.
So we want to get into the first film, but I also want to ask you guys, what is the mission of the Disorder channel? What's the end goal?
The channel's goal is to get as many of these videos out there to people as possible. There's 7,000 rare diseases, and we'd love to have something on our channel about all 7,000, really.
So another one real quick. How do people, like, if they have a film, how do they submit it to the channel and get it shown?
We've got on our website, the disordercollection.com, there's a tab across the top, FAQ, frequently asked questions, because that's one of them. How do I submit my film? So click on that, and then it takes you to a form you can submit, and you tell us about your film, and we check out your film, and we get that process started with you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Well, we are excited to get into our films for the evening. Kyle and I are honored to kick off the Rare Together, Watch Together shows tonight. And of course, tonight we're featuring selections from the Disorder channel, all with the theme of Just Diagnosed Rare. Before we get into our first film, Hope for Haley, we do want to say thank you to the Assistance Fund for sponsoring the Rare Together, Watch Together films. We also want to ask you to support the rare disease community through programs like the Rare Patient Impact Grant and Financial Advocacy Rare Patient Impact Grant. To give now, visit globalgenes.org/donate now, or you can text RARE, RARE, to 41444 to donate. Like I said, we're looking forward to this first film titled Hope for Haley. We hope you enjoy. What an incredible story of such a beautiful little girl. I love seeing her laugh and smile. Her face is the perfect face for so many inspiring, joyful moments. And I know that obviously there are days that are harder than others, and not all moments maybe are joyful. What I want to ask you guys first, and we're honored to be joined tonight with Jeff and Melissa. What I want to ask you guys first, Jeff, in the film, you mentioned something about that period of blaming yourself. When you're a parent and there's a genetic disorder or diagnosis that comes your way, I'm sure that's a very natural feeling. I know my parents experienced the same, and I'm sure so many others have. How would you encourage other parents that are walking through a new or some life-changing diagnosis that might have the same thought process or emotions that you allude to in the film?
Wow. Okay. I
Yeah,
think that.
jumping right in, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's natural to blame yourself, and even before the diagnosis, I kind of had those feelings, and I think it's focus, rather focus those energies maybe towards the greater good. We created along with other parents, we started a not-for-profit 2F1 Foundation, and I think that kind of focused my energies into something more positive and something I could do to help Haley and help others. So that's kind of how I tried to turn things around and kind of focus on that.
So along those lines, you guys are doing all this work for the condition and for your community. How I'm going to ask you another hard-hitting one. How has this situation that you did not foresee, obviously, how has it affected your relationship together?
Great question. I think it's really, it makes us be a strong team always, and prioritize the care for Haley above superficial things, probably. Like at the core, we have to focus on our family day in and day out and make sure that overcomes any other challenges, whether they be with work, whether they be with friends or family or whatever the case may be. I think just making sure that we are always putting her first, and making sure that we give each other a break here and there too. I mean, it's hard on the bad days, and that's, I think, where the tag teaming comes into play, or just giving each other an opportunity to get away with friends for a few days, just supporting each other's self-care as part of our marriage.
I think what we're looking at right now is testament to what you talk about, being strengthening your marriage. You guys are sharing a camera right now, and I like Kyle. We're not married or anything, but man, I would not want to share the computer. Like, if we were in the same studio, I would make him pick his own corner.
Yeah, no, there are some good things about social distancing, I think, So.
It definitely has its benefits. Well,
Yeah.
Melissa, can you give us a little update on what Haley is like today?
Sure. So she continues to have moments of just pure joy, which are just wonderful to be around, and continues to, experience inch stones, really. She's not yet walking. She's one word, which is mom, thankfully. But, she's, I think, really thriving in her school when she can hopefully go back physically and not have that be virtual. We're continuing tons of therapies. And, in some ways, COVID has helped us to learn to be better therapists at home. With telehealth, we were just bringing all those therapies into our home and having to be the hands of the therapist more so. So that's been good training for us, I would say. I don't know, do you have anything to add on Haley today?
Yeah, I mean, there's, she's definitely, she's talking about in the films where, first there weren't a lot of laughs, but I can say there's a lot of laughing now. She's growing crazy. But yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of more sounds coming out of her mouth, and we're hoping that she'll form some more words, and so definitely the stones are coming. So
What would you say was the trend? Like you said, at first, obviously there was not a lot of laughs because you were really concerned about the situation. And what was the turning point like? And maybe there's a turning point every day, right? It's not always laughs, but was there something that helped to give you perspective and be able to march forward instead of being buried in despair?
I don't know if we have the same answer.
Well, for me, it was when we met some of the other parents, and we formed the foundation, and we started to exchange experiences. Usually we have a monthly board meeting. Especially in the beginning, the first half hour was almost just sharing stories. It's shortened it a little bit, but we usually update each other about how our kids are doing, and some of the challenges that we're experiencing, and try to get some feedback and some best, I won't call it best practices, but what's worked for other parents. And so that's been very helpful.
We also moved closer to our family, and having that support system in place for us so that we do get a break if we need it. We have kind of that red card that we can have someone step in and help has been a huge help for us, really.
That's great.
The grandparents, I think, for any rare disease, child are definitely crucial people.
I'm sure that's, when you talk about, or when we all talk about the support from being in community together, thankfully, many of us have family. And for those of us maybe who don't, we have an extended family of friends that we have chosen over the years to help make life a little more manageable or doable. When we think about the film or this little film that we saw, what was the motivation behind that little short story? What made you want to make a little film? What caused you to make that?
Yeah, I think the 2-year journey to get a diagnosis for Haley was still fresh in our mind, and I think there was a couple of different reasons. One was just to get the word out about BBSOS, and also just rare diseases overall, because I feel like that's, unless you've actually gone through it, you don't know about rare diseases and genetic testing. So if there was just one family that would see this film and go get the genetic testing instead of spending 2 years like we did going from doctor to doctor, and really just going through a really rough time, and especially when we're as I said, when we were first time parents, so you just don't you don't know what's going on. So I think that was it. And then also I think just kind of showing the kind of the personal side to it all, and see what how people it impacts people's lives, and seeing Haley on the screen, it kind of brings it to life.
To add to what Jeff said, I think we know at the end of the day, the more numbers we have with this diagnosis, the more researchers that are going to pay attention to us, and that achieves our biggest goal, which is treatments and cures.
Yeah, I think the power of the film and whatever the podcast, the blog post, everything that the rare disease community produces, a new parent can watch this film on their own time and digest it themselves without, they can be in their own head and without the pressure of having a conversation with a real person at the very moment. And I just love that. Like, I think that's what Sean and I think about a lot when we do our podcast, is like, we're speaking to that kid who doesn't have anyone to talk to or doesn't know how yet. And I think that's what your film does for parents, maybe.
We hope
So So with that train of thought, what have you found to be the impact that film has had? Have you had responses or emails or people reach out to you? What's the impact of Hope for Haley?
So we know that our population continues to grow. There's probably at least 2 new people in our Facebook group, which is just comprised of families per week. And we use the film a lot to help with some fundraising, to help with just being able to put that human side to our story when we are trying to attract researchers or help people understand more about BBS-OAS. This is a pretty new disorder, only discovered in 2014. So I think this is just the beginning of us telling our story about it and having an opportunity to be a part of this broader community, with Global Genes. Like, I haven't had the chance to attend a Global Genes event yet. So this is very exciting for us to just, thank you for the exposure for BBS-OAS. And all of the people that we've met now through just being at the Rare Disease Film Festival in San Francisco, we walked away feeling like we just learned so much about what we need to do to focus on how to help Haley. So the community here has been one of the best impacts, certainly.
So one of the goals is to reach out to others and bring them into the BBS-OAS community. And so can you talk about BBS-OAS a little bit, in case there's somebody out there who's like, we don't know what this disease is and we're trying to figure it out? And I mean, I know I've heard so many times about people self-diagnosing because of something they heard or saw on YouTube or something. And so maybe it'd be helpful to just talk about BBS-OAS a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one characteristic that stands out is a cortical visual impairment. Typically, when a child has that, there's some type of event that's happened, and the doctors suspect, that, caused it. But in the case of these kids, and in Haley's case, there was nothing out of the ordinary. And so when you go to ophthalmologists, they're really puzzled, and they think it's something else, like a delayed visual maturation or so forth. And so I think that's one of the things that, is the biggest probably characteristic that really puzzles people. And also, there's, the delays in motor skills and so forth. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, it really is a broad spectrum across the BBS-OAS kind of community, where some of the children have, and adults too, have a mutation and some have a deletion. So it's all focused on the NR2F1 gene. Some have a mutation in the gene, some have a mutation in the DNA binding of the gene, which means there's a kind of a double negative impact. Even that healthy version of NR2F1 is impacted. And those are the most severe cases, and Haley falls into that category. And then some have a deletion. So they have one healthy version of NR2F1, and those tend to be the kids who we see developing, strong motor skills, having more language, just going down the developmental path a bit faster. So it's, I think, probably like so many of our rare disorders, there's not just one kind of sole way of looking at it or what we see. It's everything from epilepsy to the feeding issues to the developmental delays, to children who are able to just kind of get through development a little slower, but ultimately there's some visual issues happening. NR2F1 is very crucial to eye and optic nerve development, so that's why that is really kind of the common theme we see.
Beautiful.
So obviously there's a lot going on. My curiosity, or my question for you now is, with so many different aspects and different characteristics that you mentioned, do you have hopes or plans to maybe create some other films that center around BBS-OAS?
Yes, we do actually. That's one of my projects during COVID, and I'm hoping it's something we can kind of produce all virtually. But one of the common characteristics, I think, in 100% of the children parent reported, is a love of music. And so we're trying to figure out how can we incorporate that love into a video.
I think showcase
Wow,
more families and
Yeah.
show the broader community.
love it. Yeah, the more people we can show, the more people that others can relate to, right? And that's really, really powerful. I love it.
Awesome. Thank
Well, like you said, the disease was just discovered in 2014. That's not that long ago. I imagine there's a lot of work to do. And one of my favorite elements of your film, and one of you even mentioned it in this discussion tonight, is that clarification between milestones and inch stones. I love that concept, that principle, that idea that, you know what, every inch matters, whether it is a mile or a foot or a couple of feet or a block or whatever it may be. There's so much work to do. And obviously, I think we all know that when we're surrounded with friends and family and a community, we can make those inch stones more and more and more frequently, with the hopes that eventually we're hitting some pretty major milestones, maybe. And like you said, reach that end goal of finding cures and treatments.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you, Jeff and Melissa, for joining us tonight and allowing us all to view your story and meet your beautiful little girl in film. We're going to move on to our next film. Our next one is the Menkes disease, Finding Help and Hope, and we hope that you enjoy this film as well.
All right, you guys, this is another incredible film. It really shows character, I think, is what I think of when I see this film. There was so many people, Daniel, thank you for joining us. And I want to say, I think one of the beautiful things about this film is that it showed so many people with such high character, and how you guys lean on each other to get through a very difficult circumstance and do the best for your kids. So I just want to commend you for that and for this beautiful film.
Thanks. Yeah, it was important to me telling the story that it not just be my family, that I include some other families, because I wanted to give the idea that it's a shared experience. There's definitely commonalities, and we do, like you said, we rely on each other, and it's kind of sometimes your only guiding light is what the other people have gone through before you.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a couple different ways we can go, right? We have not only somebody that helped produce the film joining us right now, but we also have a parent, somebody that's affected by rare disease. So, of course, after our last little session, Kyle yelled at me because I jumped right in at Jeff and Melissa, and we didn't throw any softballs their way. And I guess, to be fair, I'll throw you a softball. Tell me a little bit about the film producer side of it. What caused you to want to create a story that did include other families and other folks?
Yeah, I had filmmaking in my career and my skill set, and then you get hit with this whammy of a rare disease diagnosis for your child, and it changes everything. But I think, when an issue is important to you, and you're going to bring whatever skills you have. If you can bike across the country, that's what you're going to do. And if you can raise a lot of money, that's what you're going to do. And I thought I could tell the story. But if the issue is more global, if you're concerned with climate change or world poverty, you might convince yourself somebody else can tell that story. I'm not uniquely required or capable of telling that story. But when there's a population of about 100, I had to keep reminding myself, if I didn't do it, probably nobody would. And I think, even though Menkes, certainly compared to Jeff and Melissa's daughter's disease, is an older rare disease. It was, named in maybe 1963-ish. So in a sense, we're a more mature community, but we're not a very big community. So despite that longer runway or history, we didn't hear much about Menkes. And I'm glad that I could amplify the story a bit.
You touched on something that I think is a really common theme in the rare disease community is we are a community of people who say, if I don't do it, nobody will. And man, excuse me as I get choked up, but I think when you come to a thing like Global Genes, or when you connect with others in the rare disease community, it is a powerful experience because you're connecting with somebody else that has the mindset of, I'm going to step up because nobody else will. And I just think that is a really incredible. I mean, I think we can all be proud of ourselves and incredibly proud of each other because we wouldn't be here if that wasn't our mindset. I love that.
Yeah, I think you can when you're feeling good about yourself, you can think, oh, I'm doing some good, or I'm making some things happen. And you go to something like Global Genes and you see how many people are doing how many amazing things that might be blowing your thing out of the water. And then you maybe up your game a little because of that, right?
Yeah. It's a humbling experience, but for sure a good education, yeah.
So another question on the film side of it, Daniel. What was some of the most exciting or joyful parts of helping piece this film together?
I was thrilled. I mean, I think it shows that it's a very low budget, almost zero budget film. But a couple of great things, just lucky breaks in a way. A friend of mine, fellow filmmaker Mike Fierstein, was going to Australia. And I said, while you're there, could you shoot this family in Australia for me? And he did. So that was amazing because her voice is so important to the story. And then the other thing was when it was done, I showed it to a friend of mine I'd done work with in my other professional capacity. He was a producer on The Closer and Major Crimes. And he, said nice things about the film. And then he said, and if there's anything I can do. And I said, well, do you think you could talk to Mary McDonnell about maybe narrating it? So in the first draft, I was the narrator and I fired myself and I replaced myself with someone infinitely better to it. So that's how Mary is in there. So those are two real pleasant production side of things, surprises in making the film. Yeah.
Well, we're excited or honored really that you made it and have it available for us to stream tonight and share in this story really with so many people all across the globe through this summit. Which, by the way, Global Genes, that's a very clever way of marketing this particular, 10 days or whatever it is. I really do think that's great.
Yep.
So, Daniel, let's get into the father side of it, maybe. What has been something that's been rewarding for you as you walk through the journey yourself?
When you talk to Jeff and Melissa and they talk about inch stones, prior to having a child with a rare disease, I wouldn't have necessarily appreciated inch stones. And I certainly do now. An accomplishment for Lucas, other people might not recognize as a big deal, but I was a little sad for the first few years that he would never grip my finger like most infants do. And then as he got to be, it took till he was 8 or so, and then he could grip my finger, and that was amazing, and there's also all this sort of recalibrating your expectations and your perspective and what you appreciate. And that, I think has made me a better person, or has at least made me a more aware person about, a lot of cliche things we hear, like, live for the moment, stay in the now. You don't know if you have your tomorrows. But now I somewhat was forced to live that way. It was thrust upon me, and those are wise old sayings for a reason. Those are good ways to live, and that became our lifestyle.
Yeah, you hear those things, but they certainly don't exactly ring true until they play out in your life, right? And you're like, oh, that actually isn't just a cliche. It's actually something that's really valuable. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. So in the film, I want to maybe touch on a little advice for new parents, right? I think that's a really important role that I'm not a parent, but that parents can play, right? Is pay it forward to the next newly diagnosed parent. And so one of the things in the film is that doctors have to be an expert on hundreds of different diseases, but you only have to be an expert on one. And I thought that was really insightful. And I think it just encourages everyone to find out as much as they can about their situation, right? And maybe if you could comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think in the early years of Lucas's diagnosis, the medical literature on the disease might have totaled like 26 pages. I don't claim to have understood it all, but I did try to read it all. And I could tell which doctors that I deal with, they had not read it, or they had read it, or some of them, I swear they'd leave the room and go read it and come back. And I could tell that they now had a little bit more information, So a lot of rare disease folks, parents will say, you are going to be the expert. And maybe not. Maybe one or two specialists in your particular disease are good. I don't claim to be a doctor or a scientist, but certainly the lived experience and whatever research you can do is going to inform a lot more people than you think, whether it's nurses, different specialists, doctors, people you come up against in the medical system. If you know your stuff a little bit, or hopefully a lot, they will listen. They might even defer to you. They might cut you the break that you deserve. My wife used to walk into doctors' meetings with a file cabinet, a mini file cabinet with a handle on it, and she'd plop that thing down, and they knew they were not going to mess. This was a serious woman. And that was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So another thing, shifting gears slightly, but you mentioned your wife, and I wanted to touch on one thing she said in the film was that when we were diagnosed, we thought we would never be happy again. And this is similar to something we talked about in the last conversation, but and obviously, you guys have found a way to be happy again. What do you think are one or two of those things that made it possible for you to take that step to be happy again?
One of the things, and maybe the biggest thing, was, and my wife is the one who phrases it this way. She says, the thing that gets us through the troubles with Lucas is Lucas. Lucas is was so happy and smiley and joyful that he'll make you forget that he's the one suffering. You, the parents, are suffering a bit on his behalf. And it's almost, he didn't communicate very well verbally anyway, but it's almost like he was telling you, if I got this, you got this. And I think one of the reasons so many people talk about his smile or his bright eyes, and I think he was a reassurance even to strangers that would see him. Like, obviously visually there's something about this kid that's not typical health, and yet he's happy. So maybe whatever's going on in my day, I can handle that. So that was a big one. And then the other, really the reason I made the film was so that people, if they were just diagnosed in those days, let's say pre-2015 when I made the film, you'd go to WebMD or NIH website or NORD's website, and you'd read this really dire diagnosis with a life expectancy of 3 to 10 years and very little hope in that story. And I couldn't change those facts. But having lived for a while and realizing, yes, you may have a ticking clock of 10 years with your child, but that's 10 years. And you're going to probably enjoy a lot of those 10 years. And don't think on diagnosis day that it's hopeless. Because what you probably hear on diagnosis day is, I'm going to lose my child, but not for 10 years or not for X number of years. So you can enjoy that time. It's really hard to put those two things together at the time. But when you're ready and you discover my film on the internet or whatever, maybe the context of these other parents saying, we like our life, we just don't like this disease.
Yeah, I think both of those points that you brought up point to the fact that you are not your condition. Lucas was defined by how he communicated with you, and it was him that was in communication with you, and you guys did not let Menkes stand between you and him. And I think you really put your finger on, one of the principles that Sean and I talk about, and that I hold really high. And I think all of us in the rare disease community understand that you are not your disease. And that's a really powerful piece of your film.
Thanks.
What would you say is your next big project, whether it's talking from the father perspective or the filmmaker perspective? As we begin to wrap this up and move on to our next film, what I want to know from you is, what can our community expect from you or the Disorder channel?
Well, yeah, of course, the channel itself is a big project and it's still underway, but it's going pretty well. But the next thing, I think at some point, Bo Bigelow and I want to get to, we set ourselves a little challenge. Can we make a comedy film about rare disease without being in bad taste? So maybe someday we'll get around to that,
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. I like it. I support that idea. I love it.
Good.
Well, Daniel, thank you again for your creativity, your skill set, like I said, not only in producing the film, but your willingness as a father to put your family sort of on the line there and share your story so openly. I think I'm a better person having seen the film and being able to chat with you a little bit here. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you both.
For all of you watching at home, it is not too late. If you have friends that want to get involved in the Global Genes events of the next 8 or 9 days, or maybe you want your friends or family to watch more movies tomorrow, you can go to globalgenes.org/events and get registered for other sessions, and of course another watch party tomorrow night and another one on Friday night.
So our next film is Foundations of Rare SYNGAP, and we hope you enjoyed this one. All right, Ashley Evans, thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to talk to you. This was a great film, and I think it really touched on an aspect that maybe we don't think about, but it's really important. I think it's a very complicated thing to get into, right? Funding research and making sure people are doing what they say and all this stuff. It can seem very overwhelming, like you guys were pointing out in the film. And I guess I'm barreling right into it. How do you find how do you dig so deep and find like the gumption to just start figuring things out?
Yeah. Well, you're an interesting person to ask that question, Kyle. I
Just
read.
interesting person, period.
Sorry, Tom, I couldn't hear you.
Just an interesting person, period.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead. Sorry.
that's also probably true. But I did read an incredible book very recently, and it was called "Shifting into High Gear." And the author of that book, his name is Kyle Bryant, talks about the need to have hope and the way that you wrote, Kyle, about the fact that hope isn't just a wish. Hope is a muscle, and hope is something that you grab onto when you have to, and you go. And for me, reading that very recently was incredibly inspirational. But as I was reflecting on that question of why did we do it, how do we dare to go after this field where neither one of us is a scientist, neither one of us pretends to be a scientist, neither one of us had been to a biology class since ninth grade, right? But we needed to do it because we felt compelled to help all of the other children with SYNGAP. And so we just started. And one of the incredible, exciting things about it was that all of these other parents wanted to come along for the ride. We created this, the vision we had was to create an open tent and bring those other parents in. And as we talked about in the film, as Effie talked about in the film, it was people had to have all sorts of skills. And as Daniel was talking about, he has the skill of filmmaking. And by the way, he helped produced this film for us. He has that skill, and some of these other parents, have other skills. At this point, we don't just have a team of 5 behind us, or we have 12 parents on our board. We have a medical advisory team of 9 parents who have some sort of medical science degree, and they help us so much, think through some of the really challenging, nuanced issues around, which researchers to fund and how to find the right folks.
I love that you share all that, and I feel like one of the principles that I'm taking away with right now is, you talk about having no idea what to do or where to begin, but that didn't stop you from taking that first step or moving that first inch and just taking action. And I think so much of life is about just stepping out and figuring it out as you go, right? So I'm glad that you point out that principle, and I love seeing and hearing the different pieces come together and just work themselves out in a sense. In fact, one of those things that kind of came together that I think is a powerful thing to talk about, and you've mentioned this in the past before, is maybe the strong bonds or friendships between your husband, and you mentioned Daniel and Bo, who both helped create the film. Talk to us a little bit about the bond or the friendship there between the gentlemen in your life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you all were alluding to the ghost of Global Genes past at the beginning of the talk, and it was at Global Genes a year ago that my husband first met Bo. And when someone in your life comes home and has a really great experience, it was just like that. My husband came home and all he could talk about was this guy he met, Bo, and Bo is so interesting, and he's created this film festival, and it's coming to San Francisco, so we can go. And Bo has this partner Daniel, and they do these amazing things for their kids, and it was wonderful for me, because I do think, I'm sitting here with two dudes who you guys clearly have a friendship or strong partnership behind you. People often, there are a lot of people often think about sort of female friendships, which are also wonderful and important, but those male friendships can be really powerful. And so I was so pleased to see my Bo and then connect with Daniel, and then I was able to meet Bo and Daniel at the film festival in November. We actually we filmed the film at the film festival. And they, out of their incredible generosity, they produced the film here for us that you saw. And so just sort of honored by that collaboration and partnership.
That's wonderful. You talked about how it all started. Maybe we can talk about a little bit about where it is right now, what the foundation is doing, who's doing the work. I feel like there has been probably some leadership changes, as there are as organizations grow. And so maybe just talk a little bit about the development of the foundation.
Sure. So yeah, I'll give you a little more of the origin story. When Tony was diagnosed, it was March of 2018, and I was actually pregnant with my second son, and actually quite pregnant. And so my husband and I spent a lot of time as we were just figuring things out. Right, we went for really long walks, because that was sort of all I could do. I just needed to kind of get out of my head. So for these long walks, and talked about, what are we going to do here? And we did some of the research that we talked about. We're talking to scientists, et cetera, and sort of started to build the foundation, entirely all volunteer, entirely all parents. And we got through the first year or so. We funded a number of grants. The researchers were making progress. We had a great event at AES, the sort of first annual SYNGAP Roundtable at the American Epilepsy Society last December. And we came out of that meeting, Mike and I, sort of looking at each other and saying, gosh, while we've made a lot of progress, we have all these wonderful, other parents who are involved and who are committed. And yet we don't have someone driving the organization every day where it's everything that they think about. And so we made a decision that Mike was going to focus on the foundation full time. And so early this year, he left his job. And so he's doing work on the foundation full time. And as I mentioned earlier, added a number of other parents to the board, and formed this medical advisory team, and have really sort of built out the team around him. But the fact that he's able to do the work full time allows him to focus on really just expand the activities of what we're doing, build that sort of network of parents. We have a number of parents who serve as ambassadors to newly diagnosed parents. We have folks who are interested in things like long-term planning for their children, and they've initiated projects around there. So it's sort of picking out the things, as I was saying before, that folks are good at, and finding those capabilities, and they're good at and they're interested in. And he's able to sort of, traffic direct on a lot of it and make sure we're making progress, and the researchers are still doing what they say they're going to do. So I'm personally really grateful that he's doing that every day.
I have a couple questions I want to ask before we run out of time, Ashley, and I'm going to give you the hard one first, because that's my style, and then we'll try to end on something a little more positive, if you will, or a little more warm and fuzzy. My question for you as a mom, what would you say has been the hardest thing of parenting?
Yeah. I mean, I think the other parents who have spoken before talked about this a little bit, but for me personally, it was the process of letting go of my own wishes. I don't even quite want to call them expectations, but I remember before Tony was even born, I was thinking, I wonder if he's going to really like literature or math, right? Like you just, and then understanding that he has certain limitations intellectually, he has behavioral limitations, he has epilepsy, etc. And then saying, oh gosh, like just slowly accepting that he's very unlikely to go to college or graduate from a mainstream, school or what have you, and accepting that and moving into appreciation for the things he can do and a focus on what are his wishes, what are his wants, what's going to make him happy, and trying to focus on facilitating that. I think that's been a real journey for the last six or so years.
That's powerful, and I want to kind of do a sub question to that one. I am not a parent either, like Kyle mentioned for himself. I can only imagine that when you are preparing to have a child, do you think, oh, this, Hollywood or a doctor or president, or, you have these dreams, if you will. How would you encourage other parents to wrestle with that period where maybe you are having to change your perspective a little bit, or maybe change the dreams a little bit?
Yeah, I think the place I found solace, and Daniel really alluded to it as well, was focusing on Tony. The time that I spent with Tony, whether it was his joyful moments or whether it was his, stones, or whether it was the harder moments, but focusing on him and where he was rather than allowing myself to get caught up in whatever my prior expectations were, or worries about the future or what have you. Just really trying to, in the moment, which again sounds like a little bit of a cliche, but is a really importantly powerful place you need to stay in sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I had mentioned I had really two questions, so I'll give you my second one, really, or the original second one. What would you say as a mom and maybe somebody that started a foundation and you're just chugging along in this rare disease space? What would you say have been one or two of your fondest moments or moments of pure joy?
I mean, I do think it's really about the people that you find in this world, the people who, whether it's your disease type or another one, whose lives and actions you have this great admiration for, and remind me, that these things can be done, and that I always say it. Tony's very anxious about the evening, about night, and something that I've said to him, that I say to him often, is tomorrow is another day, and I feel like some of the inspiration I get from some of the other parents in this community is that you can get through this night, and tomorrow is another day.
That's wonderful. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing with us, for sharing your film and yourself so openly. We really, really appreciate it. And I hope that everyone took away something. I know I did from our conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Sean.
Ashley mentioned Effie's name, and we all heard her voice narrating that film. Such a beautiful voice, and I wanted to throw it out there. Effie will be hosting or moderating tomorrow's Rare Together, Watch Together. So don't miss out. There are more films tomorrow. We want to move on to our fourth and final film for tonight. This one is Tess is Not Alone. Enjoy.
Oh man, another amazing perspective, Bo. Thanks so much for joining us. The thing that struck me about your film was near the end when you were just well, actually you emphasize it over and over, I think, in the film, is how important one family is. And I think that totally turns the rare disease thing on its head. Like, we feel so alone and so not valuable, right? Like, that's one of the feelings we feel. But then we find out that no, that is actually the opposite of the what's going on, is that every single person is so valuable to the community. Do you think that's one of the driving principles behind your film?
Yeah, I think so. That was the film for me is about two moments. The one is when we got in touch with Mike Fountain and he told us that this is a thing and that we weren't making this up, and we for the first time knew that Tess wasn't the only one. And then if you saw in the film, we managed to shoot a lot of footage at our first family conference, and so we were able to get some footage of some of these other families, and we met in person for the first time, and just hearing what they had to say. The mom, Britt, who's talking about her daughter and saying, and she belongs, just that moment of
Yeah.
understanding that there are other people out there. And I think, when I think about that very first conference, and really every conference that we've been to with those people since then, you're in the room with them and you feel like you have all this stuff you want to say, and then you don't say anything because you don't have to. You can just be. It's like, I know all about like what you've been doing for the last few years, and what I've been doing, and we can just sit and hang out, and we don't even have to talk about it. We do, but it's things that are beyond words, I guess I would say.
Right. And not having to talk about those things when your life is consumed with, like, it's a relief. You can talk about regular stuff now, right? Yeah, it's truly an amazing connection.
Yeah, you can say that again. Yeah, it is a relief just to be with people.
I think
So-
one of the topics you can talk about, if everybody's on the same page, at least in the last 6 months. Of course, you've got the whole virtual life, but Tiger King, I think, came out just right at the beginning, right? That was kind of a big deal right at the beginning era of our pandemic. So now you can talk about that, or what you have for lunch, or favorite foods. Sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah. And so something that we talked about with Daniel, I think, is really apparent to me in your film. Just that Tess is not her disease. And I mean, as a father, I can imagine that you love to talk about your daughter. So maybe just talk about, tell us a little more about Tess and what you love so much about her unique personality.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's 10 now. She's a few years older than when we shot the film, and she's doing great. She's a really happy gal. She loves school. She loves music. And she doesn't really let any of these challenges that she has get her down. She just can kind of rise above those. And I think a lot of what I do with this film, with my podcast, with like all the work that I do, I think is really about having Tess be seen. I want people to understand her as a person. I feel like I've had a number of I think just interactions when just out in public when we used to be able to do that. where people would see her and think that they knew all about her just by what she looked like or what she couldn't do. And, it used to really bother me a lot. And I think I've tried to um, just take each of those times as an opportunity to say, you know, this is somebody you can meet right now. She's not going to be able to talk to you, but she's a lovely person and she is really social and she would love to get to know you. So, we're on a playground and you're staring at Tess. Like, I'll say something like, "Hey, come on over and say hi." Like, come on over and meet Tess. Like, she'd love to hang out with you here for a little bit. And so, I think using those moments as sort of like a time for me to be able to show somebody who Tess is, I think that has been one of my favorite things about being her dad. It's because I watch it unfold and I watch people's faces as they get to know her and just that look of recognition, like, oh, I understand, there was a time when we were in the water, we were swimming, and I talked about how Tess couldn't talk, and this one kid said something awesome one time. He said, "So she's still a person," and then he swam away, and I was like, "Yes, exactly, dude, you got it." It was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah,
I love that. I think Sean can learn so much from that because usually what he does when someone stares at him is he just goes up and kicks them in the shins. And that I don't think that serves anyone very well.
What you're looking at. I love that you share that story because there's always so much that everybody, I believe, can learn from children, right? The children just don't have the same filters that maybe we develop over the years, and some children, like this young man, didn't see it as a limitation. So it's different. Doesn't make Jess any less of a person, and I love the principle there.
So, Bo, what is your advice to new parents? That's what this session is all about, right? Newly diagnosed, and we really want to speak directly to people who are in that situation. So, what's your advice?
yeah. It definitely threw me for a loop when we got our diagnosis. It was just about exactly 5 years ago, and I didn't know what to do. I felt like my whole world was kind of coming apart, and I was really grateful to have Global Genes to even go to. I ended up there before I even really knew what it was or what it was going to be. My wife was like, "You're going to this. I signed you up. I bought you a plane ticket. Pack your bags. You're going to this thing." And I'm like in Southern California at this conference before I even really know what's going on. And then I'm meeting Daniel, and I think what happened right away for me was a really lucky thing, being able to go to Global Genes and meet Daniel and meet a bunch of other people who immediately welcomed me into the community. And the first thing they do is ask like what they can do. What have I done that could help you? Let me just go ahead and share all my homework here. Do you need documents for this? Let me email you mine. Like the amount of sharing and openness from virtually everybody when I've had anything that I've been trying to get done has been just mind blowing. So I think the best piece of advice is just start reaching out to people, start asking for help. Um, you know, eh, Whoever you come across and you think they might be able to help you, just ask them, and they probably will. People make time for you. People will give you what they've been working on. They'll hand over the work they've done, and it can really make a big difference. It can save you a ton of time and energy, and help you get started.
I think that's a valuable point. We hear it all the time. What's the worst that's going to happen, or what's the worst they're going to say? No. So ask 10 people, you might get 1 or 2 no's, maybe even 9 no's. All you need is that one yes to help you take that next step, right?
Right.
So
And
I may have missed it, so I'm sort of making a confession here, but at the end of the film, you have the hashtag fix the dimmer switch. And I don't know
Yes.
if I missed what that is for. Can you help break that down or explain what that hashtag is designed for, or
Absolutely.
what it represents?
Yeah. So I am very much not a science person at all. I majored in French. I'm like a language person, so I'm not a science guy. And so this is my understanding of how USP7, the gene that is mutated in Tess and the other patients. The way that it works is it's kind of like a dimmer switch on the wall, like a rheostat. Like houses that were built in like the 70s and 80s, you probably saw this switch on the wall. It was like it was a dimmer switch, and you could dial in the light to exactly the level of light that you wanted, right? You know what I'm talking about? So that
Yes.
is, yeah. So what USP7 is it's a dimmer switch in our bodies, like in our cells. And what it's supposed to do in healthy individuals is it gets the amount of protein recycling. It fine tunes protein recycling so it works just right. And that's how it works in healthy individuals. And in people with this disease, that dimmer switch is broken. It can't fine tune things. And so protein recycling doesn't happen properly. And that's how you get this disease. So it's been our campaign since this film came out and from the beginning of our foundation to fix the dimmer switch, to try to pursue research and get to a cure and try to fix that mechanism that handles protein recycling. That's what it's all about.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like it. You talk about, the research, and I just think about the interface between the community and research, and what you were mentioning before was sharing. Everyone in the community shares so much. And so that's what we expect of our scientists. I just made that connection in my head, and I think part of it is that's the way we operate, and so we just should expect that from everyone else, right? Because it
I think
works so
so.
well.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it. I mean, I think, the publisher perish problem that scientists have, I get that they aren't super eager to share stuff and get scooped. But I always feel like there should be more collaboration. I mean, I think that's what our film festival is based on, that idea of like trying to spur these collaborations among all the stakeholders, researchers, but everybody. We got to be talking to each other more. There's so many things that I just know people are working on that could help me, and if we could just talk about it more, we could share these resources, and I think we could all make progress. It's not a zero-sum game, like you make gains and I lose. It doesn't have to be like that. I think we absolutely should be sharing.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think collaboration is a principle that rings true for so many people connected to tonight and Global Genes overall. And we agree. Like together we can accomplish so much more. So let's work together. Let's put our cards on the table and start making those phone calls, connections, discussions, and see what other skills or ideas somebody else can bring to the table.
Absolutely.
But before we lose you, Bo, I know Daniel mentioned it, I think, toward the beginning of our evening. But can you tell everybody again, for the sake of the Disorder channel, where do people find the channel? How can we follow what you guys are doing or get connected to the work of the Disorder channel or the film festival?
The channel is on Roku, and Amazon Fire TV is a free install. You can find it on both of those platforms, and you can find information about the channel at thedisorderchannel.com.
Wonderful.
Perfect. Awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight, for talking openly, and really for the work that you're doing, not only for your family and those in your community, but the rare disease community as a whole through your channel and film festival, and doing whatever you can to help spread awareness and raise the game for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, Bo. See you soon.
Well, thank you to all of you who joined us this evening. I'm not going to lie, I have not gotten into my popcorn yet, and I'm actually kind of hungry and a little disappointed that I haven't been able to chow down on my popcorn yet. So I'm going to do that as soon as we wrap this up.
You're going face first in the bucket of popcorn, huh?
Yeah, for it's only like 7:30 ish for me. I'm on the West Coast. What?
Yeah.
I still got time.
Well, I'm going to bed after this. I think.
Fair enough. Well, for everybody tuning in, we can't thank you enough for being a part of this Rare Together, Watch Together film journey that we've been on this evening. We want to say thank you again to the Assistance Fund. And thank you to those of you who have already donated. We've heard that a few donations have been coming in tonight. We also want to remind you that there is still time to donate. You can do so by visiting globalgenes.org/donate now, or simply right there on your phone. You can text RARE, RARE, to 41444. Again, I want to encourage you to register. There's a lot going on over the next 10 days or so, and it's not too late to get signed up and to tune into a virtual session from home. And another reminder or shout out to our podcast and rare disease community member friend, Effie Parks. She'll be on tomorrow night moderating the Rare Together, Watch Together film selections from the Disorder Channel, The Sibling Experience. Same place, right here, same time, 8:30 Eastern tomorrow night. Kyle, I want to say that I think you did a pretty good job this evening.
Oh man, I'm always really worried about what you think. That's
my
like
opinion.
the top of my list all the time.
I
So
don't know if everybody is picking up on that sarcasm, but I think it's important that you take note that he is not being sincere right now.
yeah. No, and I think all of our guests tonight, they are what made you shine, Sean. I think you did a good job because of everyone here. We had such a great time with everybody. Everybody has so much experience to share, and that's what makes our community so rich, right? Is everyone sharing and moving forward together. So I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you to all of those again who joined us tonight and shared their story through film and through a conversation with Kyle and I. I guess we'll hopefully see you all next year, right? In something beautiful, sunny, hopefully. Green
Hopefully it's not
ground,
too
blue
smoky.
sky. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We look forward to connecting with many of you until then, and we hope that you enjoyed the rest of your evening and the rest of your time with the Global Genes Rare Patient Unsummit. Until tomorrow or until next time, we encourage you to keep living with urgency.